They say mothers have a sixth sense about their children. But what if your biggest fear was that your own child might hurt others?
I looked at my best friend and said, I have a feeling my son killed everybody.
One man has been taken into custody accused of killing his wife, father, and grandmother.
How do you feel about your son?
I hate him. And that's a very, very strong word in my vocabulary. I don't ever use that word unless I necessarily definitely have to.
In June 2025, it started with a normal phone call to 911, a woman reporting trouble at home with her husband. Her voice was scared but calm as she tried to explain what was happening. Then everything changed in seconds. Loud bangs came through the phone, gunshots, then nothing but silence. When police rushed to the quiet house, they found something that would never leave their minds. 3 people were dead, shot by someone they trusted, someone they lived with every single day. The killer was still there, holding the gun, like he had nothing left to lose. But here's what makes this story so frightening. This wasn't some stranger who broke in. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was family. And every sign that something bad might happen was right there for years. People saw the warning signs but didn't know what they meant until it was too late. How does someone you live with become a killer? What makes a person cross that line? And why didn't anyone stop it before 3 innocent people died? The answers are hidden in a small town where neighbors thought they knew each other, but really didn't know anything at all. Grafton, New York is a small town where everyone knows each other. With only 2,000 people, it's the kind of place where nothing much happens. Families stay for generations. Kids play outside without worry. The biggest news might be the school football game or someone's new baby. This wasn't a place where you expected to see police cars racing down South Road with sirens blaring on a Wednesday evening. Yet that's exactly what happened on June 18th, 2025, when everything changed forever. At approximately 6:40 p.m., state police responded to a home on South Road at around 6:40 p.m. for a report of shots fired. But this wasn't just any emergency call. It had started as something much more routine, a domestic dispute that took a horrific turn. The call came from Whitney Fowler, a 27-year-old woman who lived in the house with her husband Joshua, his father Wilson, and his step-grandmother Anita. Her voice carried tension, but she remained calm enough to explain what was happening to the 911 dispatcher. Then, in the middle of her report, everything changed. Gunshots erupted through the phone line. The connection went silent. Within minutes, emergency responders were racing toward what would become one of the most shocking crimes in the county's recent history. When officers arrived at the modest home tucked behind trees on South Road, they found a scene that would haunt them forever. Whitney, 27, was one of 3 people fatally shot at a Rensselaer County home in Grafton on Wednesday evening, June 18th. She lay outside the house, her life ended by the very violence she had tried to report. Inside the home, 2 more bodies waited. Wilson Fowler, 55, Joshua's father, had been shot dead. So had 69-year-old Anita Crandall, Joshua's step-grandmother. Her husband, 26-year-old Joshua Fowler, is now charged with murder after allegedly gunning down Whitney, his father Wilson Fowler, 55, and his step-grandmother Anita Crandall, 69. But perhaps the most chilling part of the scene was what officers found next. Standing outside the house, holding the weapon that had just claimed 3 lives, was Joshua Fowler himself. He made no attempt to run. He didn't try to hide what he had done. According to reports, he was reportedly hoping police would end his life in a suicide by cops scenario. The weapon in his hands was a rifle that belonged to his father, legally owned and kept in the house. Officers ordered him to drop it, but he refused. For tense moments, the standoff continued until officers used tasers to subdue him without further bloodshed. Just like that, the killing spree was over. But the questions had only begun. Who was Joshua Fowler, and how had he reached this point? The answers weren't simple, but they weren't entirely hidden either. In fact, looking back, the warning signs had been there for years. Joshua had grown up in that house on South Road. Neighbors remembered him as a quiet kid who stayed by himself. He didn't cause trouble, but he didn't make friends either. While other children played together, Joshua watched from far away. In school, teachers said he was an average student who seemed distant. He would sit in the back, do his work, but never join discussions. During breaks, he stood alone while other kids played. Some teachers thought he was just shy. Others felt something deeper was wrong, but nobody pushed to find out. As he got older, the disconnect got worse. Other students made friends and dated. Joshua stayed isolated. His grades were okay, but he showed no interest in anything. When classmates talked about college and careers, Joshua seemed to have no plans at all. After high school, most of his classmates left town for college or jobs. Joshua simply stayed home. He didn't look for work or go to school. He just lived in his childhood bedroom while years passed by. To neighbors, he seemed like another small-town guy who never found his way. But his family saw something more troubling. His mother, Eleanor Crandall, had been worried about her son for years. She and Wilson had separated when Joshua was younger, and she had eventually moved out of state. But even from a distance, she could sense the darkness growing in her son. The mood swings were getting worse. The angry outbursts were becoming more frequent, and the way he could go completely silent during conversations was deeply unsettling. Years before the murders, Eleanor had voiced her fears to Wilson in stark terms. Joshua was going to kill someone someday. It wasn't a dramatic accusation born from a moment of anger. It was a mother's genuine terror about what her son might be capable of. But Wilson didn't believe her, or perhaps he couldn't let himself believe it. He thought Joshua just needed structure, discipline, and a firm hand. That was how Wilson had been raised, and that was how he tried to raise his son. But Joshua wasn't responding to traditional parenting approaches. Instead of getting better, he was getting worse. And rather than seeking professional help, the family buried the problems beneath layers of silence and shame. It's a pattern that repeats in far too many households across America. The belief that family problems should stay within the family, even when those problems are becoming dangerous. When Whitney entered Joshua's life, she brought light to his dark world. Whitney Lundgren was everything Joshua wasn't. She was happy, warm, and full of dreams. Where Joshua saw problems, Whitney saw chances. Where he stayed quiet, she filled rooms with laughter. Whitney came from a loving family that supported her goals. She was kind to everyone and always looked for the good in people. Her father, Wayne Lundgren, said she wouldn't hurt anyone.
Always tried to help people when she could. Would actually put people in front of her own problems.
She wanted to become a pediatric nurse and help sick children. She was smart and caring, exactly what hospitals looked for in nurses. Her teachers remembered her as someone who really cared about her patients. When she met Joshua, her friends and family were confused. Whitney was outgoing and had clear goals. Joshua was withdrawn and had no plans. She was surrounded by friends and opportunities. He was alone and unemployed. But Whitney saw something in Joshua that made her want to help him. Maybe she thought her love could fix whatever was wrong with him. It's common for caring people to think they can heal broken souls. In the beginning, Joshua might have seemed better with Whitney around. He may have been more social and hopeful. This gave Whitney hope that she was helping him change. But what Whitney didn't understand was that surface changes often hide deeper problems. While Joshua might have acted better to keep Whitney happy, his real issues from childhood were still there. The anger, the isolation, the inability to connect with people. Love alone couldn't cure these things. They moved in together in the house on South Road with Wilson and Anita. Whitney probably thought this was temporary, a way to save money while building their relationship. She likely saw it as a step toward the independent life she'd always planned. When they got married, Whitney hoped this would be a new beginning. Maybe she thought marriage would motivate Joshua to find work and engage with life more. But instead of getting better, things got worse almost immediately after the wedding. Whitney wasn't the type to complain openly or air her private struggles, but those close to her began to notice changes. She became more guarded, less spontaneous. The bright spark in her voice started to dim. Her father, Wayne, began to worry when Whitney would call home with vague updates about Joshua having a rough week or being upset about something small. She would mention giving him space, dealing with his moods, trying to be understanding. She never said directly that she was scared, but her silence spoke volumes. Wayne encouraged his daughter to leave if she felt unsafe. Whitney admitted she had looked into domestic violence shelters, just in case, but each time she ultimately stayed. It's a heartbreaking pattern seen in countless abusive relationships. The victim hoping things will get better, making excuses for their partner's behavior, and gradually becoming isolated from the support systems that could help them escape. The problems at the Fowler house weren't completely hidden from authorities. CBS 6 has learned about at least 3 different runs by law enforcement to investigate Joshua Fowler before the triple homicide on June 18, 2025. Police had been called to the home multiple times over the years for domestic disputes and family arguments, but each incident was treated as isolated rather than part of a larger pattern of escalating violence. In July 2018, officers responded to a fight between Joshua and his father, Wilson. When they arrived, the family downplayed the incident as just a disagreement, and no arrests were made. Then, in October 2021, police were called again, this time for an incident involving Joshua and Whitney. Once again, the situation was defused temporarily, but no real intervention took place. These missed opportunities haunt investigators and advocates alike. Each police response represented a chance to connect the family with resources that might have changed the outcome. But without victims willing to press charges or family members ready to admit the severity of the problems, law enforcement's hands were often tied. By spring 2025, those closest to Whitney noticed she was pulling away from friends and social activities. She spent more time at home and seemed increasingly isolated. When she did go out, she appeared distracted and frequently checked her phone. The confident, vibrant woman her friends remembered was fading away, replaced by someone who seemed to be walking on eggshells in her own life. Meanwhile, Joshua's behavior was becoming more erratic. He wasn't working and rarely left the house. Neighbors noticed him sitting on the porch for hours without speaking to anyone, or pacing around the property in apparent agitation. Some days he would disappear into his room and not emerge for long stretches. The isolation and inactivity seemed to be feeding whatever darkness was growing inside him. In the days leading up to June 18th, there were no new police reports or obvious signs that violence was imminent, but something had clearly shifted. The tension that had been building for years was reaching a breaking point. When the moment finally came, It erupted with shocking suddenness. Whitney's 911 call captured the transition from what seemed like another domestic argument to deadly violence. Her calm report of a domestic dispute was interrupted by the sound of gunshots, and then silence. The investigation that followed revealed the full scope of the tragedy. The Rensselaer County District Attorney's Office said Joshua Fowler, 26, of Cropseyville, is facing 1 count of first-degree murder and 3 counts of second-degree murder. The first-degree murder charge likely relates to the deliberate nature of the killings and the fact that multiple victims were involved. Joshua Fowler pleads not guilty in Grafton triple homicide, setting the stage for what will undoubtedly be a complex legal proceeding. His defense team will likely focus on mental health issues and his history of untreated psychological problems, while prosecutors will argue that regardless of his mental state, he made the conscious decision to take 3 innocent lives. The community response has been one of shock and grief, but also uncomfortable recognition. Many residents have admitted they noticed warning signs but didn't know how to respond or whom to call. The tragedy has sparked conversations about domestic violence, mental health resources, and the responsibility communities have to intervene when they see troubled situations developing. For Whitney's family, no legal outcome can restore what was lost. Her father, Wayne, has spoken publicly about his daughter's dreams of helping children as a pediatric nurse.
Fun-loving person, always tried to stay positive, always tried to help people when she could, would actually put people in front of her own problems.
This case shows a bigger problem in America. Family murders are happening more often than people realize. In 2024 alone, there were over 90 cases where family members killed their own relatives. That means every 4 days, a family was destroyed by someone they trusted. Experts say these crimes usually involve men with untreated mental health problems, money troubles, and a history of controlling behavior. The killers are often isolated and feel like they've lost control of their lives. When they can't handle their problems anymore, they sometimes decide to kill their families too. What makes these cases so sad is that they don't happen suddenly. They build up over months or years as the person's mental state gets worse. Family members often notice strange behavior but don't realize it's a warning sign of violence. Joshua's case fits this pattern perfectly. He had been isolated and angry for years. He wasn't working and felt like a failure. When Whitney tried to get help by calling 911, it was already too late to stop what years of untreated problems had created. What makes these cases particularly tragic is how preventable many of them are. The warning signs are usually present for months or years before the violence erupts, but family members often minimize the danger. Victims feel trapped by fear or financial dependence, and communities struggle with knowing when and how to intervene in private family matters. The Fowler case serves as a stark reminder that domestic violence can escalate to deadly levels quickly and without obvious warning. Whitney's decision to call 911 that evening suggests she recognized the immediate danger. But by then it was too late for the intervention that might have saved her life and the lives of Wilson and Anita. As the legal proceedings continue, the focus will inevitably turn to questions of mental health, family dynamics, and whether this tragedy could have been prevented. Joshua's mother, Eleanor, has spoken publicly about her long-standing fears about her son, expressing grief not only for the victims, but for the son she feels she lost long before the murders occurred. The ripple effects of the June 18th murders continue to spread through the Grafton community. Residents report feeling less secure in their homes, more aware of the potential for violence in seemingly normal families, and more committed to checking on neighbors who might be struggling. The Fowler house on South Road stands empty now, a reminder of how quickly lives can be shattered and families destroyed. For those driving past, it serves as a sobering monument to the importance of taking warning signs seriously and the devastating consequences when help comes too late. The case remains active as Joshua awaits trial, but the broader lessons are already clear. Mental health resources need to be more accessible and less stigmatized. Domestic violence education should be widespread and ongoing, and communities need to develop better systems for intervening when they recognize families in crisis. Most importantly, the voices of victims like Whitney need to be heard and believed when they reach out for help. Her 911 call represented a moment of courage in what was likely a long period of fear and isolation. Though it came too late to save her, it stands as a testament to the strength it takes for victims to speak up against those who threaten them. The Fowler family murders will be remembered as more than just another true crime story. They represent a failure of multiple systems designed to protect vulnerable people, and a reminder that behind every statistic about domestic violence is a real person whose life could have been saved with the right intervention at the right time. As this case moves through the legal system, the hope is that lessons will be learned and changes will be made to prevent other families from experiencing similar tragedies. But for Whitney, Wilson, and Anita, those changes come too late. Their lives serve as a reminder of what's at stake when warning signs are ignored and help doesn't come in time. This tragedy makes us think about important questions. Could someone have prevented these deaths if they had acted on the warning signs? What should we do when we notice troubling behavior in families around us? If you or someone you know is in danger from domestic violence, help is available. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-79-923. Don't wait until it's too late. What do you think about this case? Could this have been stopped? Subscribe to our channel and share your thoughts in the comments below.